Well, hello. I'm Matthew Atherton Baber. Welcome to our cottage at Nashville. I normally see you in my garden in Kentucky, and this weekend I'm in Nashville, and I appreciate you joining me because so many of you have found me recently on Instagram, some of you on Facebook, quite a lot of you here on YouTube, and you have noticed that I've posted several Bud Vases lately, and I really appreciate your questions. So today I'm going to answer them, and I'm going to tell you what I do to make Bud Vases successful, what I avoid, and how you might think about the partnership between your flower and your container so you can be successful too. I think the thing that you like about the Bud Vases that I'm doing is they are classic. They don't seem trendy, they don't seem like any kind of fad, and they're just timeless. So that's what I'm going to teach you to do. A timeless Bud Vase, and with any luck, you have grown some flowers in your own garden. So we've got to talk about two things. We've got to talk about the container, and we've got to talk about the flower. So let's start with containers. Assuming we are going to do a classic Bud vase, which is basically one straight stem in harmony with the container, it's more important to think about what you don't want than what you do. I have some containers here to illustrate. This is a perfectly attractive vase. It is silver overlay, gosh, probably from the 40s. You see this shape a lot. It is kind of a classic trumpet. And what is this good for? This is good for something with a bit of a spray form. And that's not what we're using. The classic Bud vase is a straight stem, perhaps with some leaves, and basically think of a mass flower, it's called in floristry, which is basically a ball on a stick, or a circle at the top of a stick. So if you put, I'll use my knife to illustrate, if you put something like that in here, it's going to fall to one side. A single stem is going to fall to one side and not be harmonious on the whole. So save this for another purpose. More or less, the same is true for this. This is maybe a fancy version of it, but this is basically a small cylinder vase. And if I put one stem in, it's going to fall to one side. Now, could there be occasions when that's what you want? Yes, but that is not the classic, simple Bud vase. Now we come to this. This is basically what you might call a gathering vase form, but it's quite small. So it is a Bud vase proportion. This may work nicely for us. So we'll come back to that. Now I've got two. These are crystal. I forget who made them. If the light was better and my eyes were younger, I could probably read it from the mark. But this one was sold to me by a dealer as a Bud vase, but I disagree. I think this is actually a drinking glass because of the wide opening. This is definitely a drinking glass, but I bought it for flowers. What kind of flowers would I put in these? Roses? Sure. Maybe some kind of a spray form? Sure. But I want something that is probably a single stem that branches and has voluminous blooms. Maybe some bourbon roses, some very cupped cabbage roses, something like that that has some weight, that is distributed around this opening. That's the kind of thing you use for this, not a single bud. Imagine, and I'll demonstrate in a moment, one stem leaning out, on the whole, is not going to be the most proportionate, balanced look. And last of all, this is definitely a cup, a small drinking glass. Could it hold flowers beautifully? Yes. Unless your rose is quite large and the stem is quite short, the bloom is large and the stem is short, or maybe the same is true for perhaps some varieties of dahlia, something like that. This is also just not your best option. Could this maybe hold 3 or 5 blooms? Sure, but one single bloom, probably not. This is the classic Bud vase. I like this for many reasons. This one is vintage Waterford crystal. I bought it as a pair at a thrift shop. I have shown it in other films, so you may have seen it before if you've been with me for a while. I'm very happy to say that I paid $2 a piece for them in perfect condition. And what is going for this vase in terms of a successful bud vase for our purpose? It's relatively tall, so you've got a deep water reservoir for a long stem. The neck is narrow, so that when you feed your stem in, the weight of the bloom will pull the stem against the side of your container. It is a basic physics demonstration. It's a lever. The edge of the vase is your fulcrum. You've got the weight of the bloom pulling against the side of the container. And with any luck, you've got some leaves to hold it even more upright. And that's what we want. So let's look at the flowers I've got here. These are some roses that I grew. And it's been very, very hot lately. And I'm saving as many as I can delay to cut next week for a class I'm teaching. So these were looking good. And I cut them to show you, though I've got to untangle them slightly. Well, I don't remember exactly what I cut here. Maybe I've got, let's see. Ah, that explains it. Oh, that might be very good for demonstration indeed. Let's go with this true bud as a starting point. Keep these in their water for now. I already have cleaned this vase and have it with just plain water. And I want you to think about the leaves as the mechanic. That's what we say in floristry, the how that we achieve the look. The leaves are what determine how far in the vase this stem descends. And because this is quite tall and beautiful, let's start with this. Now, I'm going to remove any thorns or foliage that will be below the waterline, and I'm going to give it my famous long cut. If you don't know about my long cut, I encourage you to look at some of my other films. And let's just drop this in. Okay, I don't like the way this leaf is compromised. It's not strong enough to stand. Now, this is not as impressive as it will be when it's open. In fact, I'm not sure that I'm entirely happy with the way that one stands, so I'll show you another one as well. But when this opens, this gives you, starting as a bud, it gives you the maximum lifespan, and this will easily, if you care for it, last a week. So take this as Exhibit A. You see that the basically long tubular vase is like a water vial for the long straight stem. And even by leaning it so that the thorn on the stem balances against the leaf on the other side, stands that at an angle that I'm much happier with. Okay, good. Let's take another example. I'm going to undo this for a moment. And let's take this, this rose, by the way, is called Winter Sun. It's one of my favorite yellow roses. I absolutely love it. And a lot of other people love it too. I get a lot of compliments from that. This rose is called Maurice Utrio. And normally it has a lot more petals than this. This one is kind of between main flushes and is, it went from bud to fully open in the house yesterday, despite the house being much cooler than outside. So, even though it's been in water, I give it a fresh, long cut. And that cut is not as long as I like, so I'm going to supplement with a secondary cut and remove this because it is too far down. And let's just see what this gets us. Now that's quite attractive. I have hooked a big thorn on the edge of the vase. And I can't see it from the front, but I imagine that looks quite beautiful. Where would I use this? I use Bud Vases everywhere, as those of you who've seen the content and asked me questions about it know. I might put this on an entrance table in a front reception hall in a house. I might put it on the vanity of a powder room. I might put it on a bedside table for myself or a guest. But this is quite beautiful, and you see that basically a circle or a sphere on a long, slender stick is exactly the look that you want when your bud opens and you style a bud vase. Can you put more than one stem in this? Yes. I would aim for odd numbers. I would not crowd this neck. I would probably, in one this skinny, with a stem of that diameter, only use a maximum of 3 stems. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to demonstrate. I normally do not lay things down on the table like that, but I want to show you this. So while we have it, I digress slightly. This is not exactly a spray, but you can see if we put this here, simply the tension of the stems pressing against that vase already gives you some control of how you place these. And then let's say for variety, let's say this stem is longer, maybe you float this in the back, and that's very nice. It's also different than the plain classic Bud vase. So I'm going to cut these, and we will see if we can do 3 to answer yet a few more of your questions on how these work. So remember, your leaves and sometimes even your thorns can help you with your placement. You do not want any leaves, any thorn, any foliage inside the vase in contact with water. Now, just to see what's happening, well, it's a very nice long cut, which you want so that your stem can drink. It opens the cellulose drinking cells. Let's just see what we get here. You do not want them like this, like a pair of headlights. You want a variety of height, and you want the foliage to fall naturally. Now that's a bit of variety. I can potentially live with that. Let's see what happens with this third stem. Now, you could choose to make it a bit shorter, or you could choose to make it taller, because you just don't always know how it's going to fall until you try it. Let's just see. Let me have a look there. I always want these to look effortless, not tortured, not fussy. I could live very happily with that. As these open, they will make a nice volume of bloom, but it's still not complicated. Now, there is a use for these shorter vases. Sometimes you don't have the luxury of a long stem. These are not terribly long stems, but they're longer than some. So if you have a short stem, that might be a time to think about a vase like this. Also, you have to change this vase water. I would normally say for a vase every other day, but there is such a small volume of water here. You might have to change it every single day and completely wash the vase, rinse the stems, recut them, and as you do that, cut, day or every other day, you lose stem length. So eventually you need a shorter vase. So let's look at how we might do that. I'm going to take this one apart and just improvise. A good rule of thumb for arranging flowers generally is that you do not want to be in total height more than about 2.5 times the height of the container. So if your container was 5 inches, you would not want the total height to be more than, let's call it not quite 12, maybe 12.5. I think twice is better generally. So if this is not 5 inches, but let's call it 5, 10, a little more than 10, that's good. For more sprawling arrangements, about as wide as high is a good rule of thumb, but a Bud vase is a different thing. It's a tall, slender, elegant composition. So let's think about this. This is clearly too tall for that vase. Even thinking of what we can do, I think that is too high to go, even more than double that height. So I am just experimenting here. And I generally always say, when you have a curve of any kind in your stem, you want it curving up like it's growing to the sun, not flopping out. Maybe you don't always have the luxury of controlling that in this very, very simple mechanic. But if I make this stem a little bit shorter, I will have the advantage of this leaf to lean against the vase. Now, I also go dangerously close to this foliage falling in the water, so proceed with caution. But next, let's see what we can do by adding this more open bloom. I'm removing any foliage that could fall below the waterline, giving it a nice long cut. And I think this foliage is going to give us some trouble with the water, but let's see. Oh, actually, that's quite nice. Let me see from your perspective. Okay, so we definitely need one more. We could use either of these. I think the foliage on this might give us a better chance at achieving something that will make us happy. So it's just like tasting food as you cook and adjusting as you go. You've really got to look at your materials and look at your container and make them work for you as you're making your floristry. So again, I'm keeping all the foliage out of the water, and let's just see what that does. There. I would very happily use that. And put this, for example, on a bathroom vanity, put this on a bedside table. I don't know if you can tell, but the foliage is not quite touching the water from where I can tell. And it is such a small volume of water that indeed you would need to change it often. So that is the basic story on Bud Vases. Thank you for your questions. I hope I've answered them. I will add that what I would not use is I would not use, even if you've got a long, slender stem, I would not use something that's a spray form at the top, like, for example, Alstroemeria. That was a specific question that I had. And if you use a long stem, like a Jabura daisy, for example, or chrysanthemum, if there are no leaves to modulate your height, you're going to have a lot more trouble with your arranging. The only thing you've got is the diameter of the vase and the length you cut the stem, and that's much less control, so I don't think you'll be happy. Certainly think about hirsute stems, that's like a sunflower, anything that's like a hairy or a fuzzy stem. They will foul your water faster, and in such a small reservoir of water, it will happen much faster indeed. As with all cut flowers, keep them away from direct sunlight, drafty moving air, and fruit. And the cooler your house, the longer they will last. For additional details, certainly go on my website, mathertonbaber.com. And I have 3 classes that might interest you. I've got cutting or selecting and conditioning flowers and foliage. I talk about roses, I talk about all kinds of foliage, both things you might grow and things you might buy. And it is the absolute foundation for a high standard of floristry that does not let you down. And whether you're working at home, in a professional capacity, it is an invaluable resource. As a supplement to that, I have a class on hydrangea, and you can do very beautiful, simple hydrangea arrangements, but it will not be a bud vase. That's perfectly fine. It's just a different thing, and many people love them, so you might find that useful. And last of all, I have a masterclass on vase arranging. That is foam-free arranging in plain water. More complex than what we've done here, but I make it accessible and manageable, step by step. I tell you everything about my process, and in that I teach you 3 different techniques. So you've got a choice, not only to suit how you like to work, but how to suit your containers and your situations. All of that is at mathertonbaber.com/learn-online. mathertonbaber.com, learn online. Of course, here I am on YouTube, mathertonbaber. The same on Instagram, at mathertonbaber. I'm on Facebook as mathertonbaber Studio-Workshop. And if you like the kind of content that I'm giving you, thank you so much for all of your messages. Also, please click the bell icon to know when I've got more films coming out here on YouTube. Click the like so I know you have seen this content and enjoyed it. And leave me a comment. I love your comments. They help me understand how to make the content better for you. I always want it to be helpful. I'm not just making it for my health. I really want it to help you. And I respond to every single comment here on YouTube. So thanks very much for watching. Good luck with your Bud Vases. I'll see you soon.